Welcome everybody. We are glad you could join us. Prakriti Foundation is an arts and culture NGO in Chennai, founded in 1998, and it has been a space where scholars, researchers, artists, critics, poets, and filmmakers have been able to present their work to those engaged with it on a serious terms. One of its four annual festivals, Poetry with Prakriti, features eminent and emerging poets from India and abroad, presenting to small, intimate audiences at several venues in the city. Schools, colleges, cafes, galleries, boutiques, banks, IT parks, green public parks, and other commercial establishments. Due to COVID restrictions, Poetry with Prakriti is online this year, with readings on the first three Saturdays of every month, bringing you poetry via your computer screen or smartphone. We are mindful of the video conferencing fatigue, so these are short events, around 15 to 20 minutes of reading a different poet each time, followed by a Q&A session with the poet. We've had sessions already with poets K.G. Darwala, Perumal Murugan, Priya Sarukai Chabria, Danish Hussain, K. Srilata, and Ranjit Vaskoche. In the months ahead, until next year this time, when hopefully we will be able to have a more conventional festival, Prakriti Foundation will bring you many more poets, some well loved, others who have not yet got a wider audience. This week, our poet is Cheran Rudhramoorthy. We are collaborating with the Department of English, University of Madras. We will take questions after the reading. Feel free to comment and chat with each other in the chat section. But questions for the poet must only be typed in the Q&A section. You can find the Q&A box in the below video in below the video. And please keep your questions brief and, if possible, connected directly to the poems being read. And please don't flood the Q&A box with multiple questions. Do check if someone else has asked a similar question before you post. We'll try to take all the questions that come up, but that may not be possible because we have time constraints. And Ms. Kavita Muralidharan will be today's moderator. And to on today's reading, I now welcome Dr. S. Armstrong, Professor and Head, the Department of English from the University of Madras.
Thank you, Harish. Thank you so much. Dear Meera, Mr. Harish, Santosh, Kavita Muralidharan, who is the moderator, and our poet for today's program, Cheran Rudhramoorthy. Good evening to you all, and my dear students and members of audience from India. It is a great pleasure to introduce a great writer, a very popular and reputable, writer in this world, I can say. Cheran is well known for his poetry, drama, and journalism also, all roll into one. It is very rare to find such a combination of journalism, poetry, and also plays together in one. And Professor Cheran, I would like to call. He is very well known for three important disciplines in the University of Windsor: anthropology, sociology, and criminology are his favorite subjects. But his creative, genius resulted in writing nearly 15 books in Tamil, which has been translated into 20 languages in the world. Such a laurel our Cheran has, and he is also well known all over the world for his very, very powerful poetry. And Cheran has got lot of poems published in various journals like Bomb in New York, Modern Poetry in Translation, Many Mountains Moving, Exiled Ink, Mantra Review, and Talisman are some of the important journals that carried Cheran's poetry. One of his latest poems has been included in Singing in the Dark, an anthology of lockdown poems brought out by Benquin Random House in 2020, very recently. So, such a credit for Cheran is this one is one of the important laurels we have to remember. And Dr. Cheran got lot of awards. One of them I'd like to highlight here is he was the recipient of the International Poetry Award from ONV Kurup Foundation in Dubai in 2017. That is one of the prestigious award, given to Cheran. And Cheran performs poetry. All of you know very well, performance poetry is coming up all over the world. And Cheran is very well known for performance poetry. He has performed his poetry at various international writers' festivals held in UK, Singapore, US, Indonesia, India, Sweden, the Netherlands, Canada, Ramallah, West Bank, Dubai, and Mexico. Look at the continental recognition given for our poet Cheran. And not only that, his plays are well known in English language. They have been produced and performed in many international cities like Toronto in Canada, New York, Chicago in US, and also New Jersey in US. Recently, Singapore's modern dance group Chowk has produced and performed a dance play based on his poems titled The Second Sunrise. We are all familiar with Second Coming, a poem by W.B. Yeats. Here is a title from Cheran, The Second Sunrise. This was performed by the Singapore modern dance group. It's a kind of it is an international dance festival, and it was also performed in U.S. in the Washington's Kennedy Center for the Arts, one of the prestigious places for promoting arts in this world. So such a potentiality we have with the creative genius of Charan. I am very happy to be associated with Prakriti to host Charan for the audience today. Prakriti has been collaborating with the Department of English for several years, and they are also collaborating with us for conducting theatre festival. The Department of English has a theatre wing called Curtain Calls. So Prakriti is supporting to conduct lot of play competition for students affiliated to University of Madras every year. Thank you so much. I'm very happy to present chair to you all. Thank you.
So do you want me to start?
Welcome, Charing sir, to read his poems here. Most welcome.
Vanakkam. Thank you very much for your kind and sweet and somehow overestimated the remarks on my contribution, but I'm truly glad. What I propose today is to read some of my poems in English, followed by the Tamil original. And I would like to begin by saying a big thank you to my translators and friends, Anusha Ramasamy and Geeta Sukumaran, because some of you may know that I write everything in English except poetry. I write poetry in Tamil, and that is my organic link to my heritage and my language and my identity as, as a poet in Tamil. So the poem that I'm going to read, the first few ones, are some of my recent ones. I was confined, like all of you, under lockdown. It's a different kind of lockdown because of Corona. I was hiding in a small cottage 2 hours from Toronto. So very rarely I go out for a walk on the street. And suddenly I saw this street sign, on the street, anytime. That is the, on the street, anytime is the street sign that was there. So that kind of evoked all kinds of the good and bad memories about street, various kinds of streets, highway, the small laneways and all these kind of things in the past 35, 40 years. So I started writing a series of poems on the street. So I will read a few from that series. And title for all the poems is On the Street, Anytime. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, right? So on the street, anytime. If you walk straight ahead on the street, anytime, the bridges are icy. The roadway meant for fire engine in a hurry snowed. The highway split into two. On the right side, the glow and glamour of wealth. It's a walkway, shining night and day. On the left, our land of coolies. Its streetway unknown to many. If you speed, a revolution might come. However, now the Taoist dream, a burning heart. That was number 1, On the Street, Anytime. On the Street, Anytime, number 2. On the street, anytime, a dry jackfruit leaf falls down. It will not fly at night. In the dead of day, only the military tank rushes over it. Sunlight turns it into trace on the street. On the street, anytime, the boy, or sometimes a girl, would be dragged out and shot. Their blood is not wasted. At first, quickly, and then leisurely, it seeps into the paddy field. Before being killed, many are the witnesses who saw his and her eyes. It was the poet's task to gather them. It was the poet's task to gather them then. With great wariness, on the street, anytime a murderer falls down in his fingers. In his finger is a cigarette waiting to be lit. Waiting to be lit. Without love or claim the one who tortures it. Anyone is our national anthem. The one who tortures his cigarette is our national anthem. I'll read that, the second one in Tamil, so that you can get the taste and the feel of the original Tamil. இந்த தெருவில் எப்போதும் ஒரு காய்ந்த பலா இலை வீழ்கிறது. அது இரவில் பறக்காது. ஆதரவுமற்ற நண்பகலில் படையினரின் கவச வாகனம் மட்டும் அதன் மேல் விரைகிறது. வெயில் அதனை தெருவில் உயர்ச்சுவடாக மாற்றுகிறது. இந்த தெருவில் எப்போதும் ஒருவனை அல்லது ஒருத்தியை இழுத்து வந்து சுடுகிறார்கள். குருதி வீணாகாது. முதலில் துரிதமாகவும் பின்னர் ஆறுதலாகவும் அது நெல் வயலுக்குள் இறங்குகிறது. கொல்லப்படும் முன் அவளின் கண்களை பார்த்த சாட்சியங்களோ ஏராளம். அவற்றை தொகுப்பது கவிஞனின் பணி அன்று. மிகுந்த களைப்புடன் இந்த தெருவில் ஒரு கலையாளி, இந்த தெருவில் ஒரு கொலையாளி சரிந்து விழுகிறான். அவன் கைவிரல்களில் எரி பெற்ற காத்திருக்கும் சிகரெட்டுக்கு என்பிலாது கொள்ளி தருபவன் தான் எப்போதும் நமது தேசிய கீதம். அவன்தான் எப்போதும் நமது தேசிய கீதம். My third one in the series is on the street anytime. On the street anytime, you can get it with the body. pleasure is but part of it. Wetness, a mere wound. On the street, anytime we may melt together as body and soul, as the indivisible full form like dogs, like swallows, like colorless butterflies, like snakes, we can come together. At the end of the fall, leftover leaves are the only witness. Enlightenment for the falling leaf, lust for the sprouting leaf. On the street, anytime, we can fuck without love. It is unknown how much warmth remains in the sperm that fell on the snow. It is unknown. On the street, anytime, I throw out unfinished poems written on beautiful colored papers. Whose feet steps on them on the street? Whose feet steps on them in the street? Let me read that one also in Tamil because I like it. இந்த தெருவில் எப்போதும் நீங்கள் உடலோடு உடலை கொள்ளலாம். துய்ப்பு அதில் ஒரு கூறு, ஈரம் வெறும் காயம். இந்த தெருவில் எப்போதும் நாம் உடலும் உயிரும் என உருகலாம். பிரிபடா வடிவ முழுமை போல, நாய்கள் போல, சிட்டுக்குருவிகள் போல, நிறமற்ற வண்ணத்து பூச்சிகள் போல, பாம்புகள் போல இந்த தெருவில் நாங்கள் எப்பொழுதும் உருகலாம். நாம் கூடலாம். இலையுதிர்கால முடிவில் எஞ்சியிருந்த இலைகள் மட்டுமே சாட்சி. வீழும் இலைக்கு ஞானம், துளிர்க்கும் இலைக்கு மோனம். வீழும் இலைக்கு ஞானம், துளிர்க்கும் இலைக்கு மோனம். இந்த தெருவில் எப்போதும் நாங்கள் காதலற்று புணரலாம். உறைபனி மேல் சிந்திய சுக்கிரத்துக்கு எத்தகைய வெப்பம் மெஞ்சிருக்கும் என்று எங்களுக்கு தெரியாது. எத்தகைய வெப்பம் மெஞ்சியிருக்கும் என்று எங்களுக்கு தெரியாது. இந்த தெருவில் எப்போதும் அழகிய வண்ணத் தாள்களில் நான் எழுதிய நிறைவற்ற கவிதைகளை வீசி அறிகிறேன். தெருவில் யாருடைய காலடிகள் அவற்றின் மீது, யாருடைய காலடிகள் அவற்றின் மீது. So I'm going to move on to the final one on this series, on the street anytime, number 5. On the street anytime awaits an unfulfilled pothole. Rain during the winter session, leave the fall in the cold. The wind that freezes in the chill, feel that home. Near it, a white policeman shot 2 boys multiple times. That pothole twice filled up with blood. Both of them looked exactly like my son. Both boys looked exactly like my son. Height, beauty, black, and brave. I'll read that one in Tamil as well. இந்த தெருவில் எப்போதும் காத்திருக்கிறது செப்பனிடப்படாத ஒரு குழி. கார்காலத்தில் மழை நீர், கூதிரில் உதிரும் இலைகள், பின்பனியில் உறையும் காற்று அந்த குழியை நிரப்புகிறது. அதனருகே வெள்ளை போலீஸ்காரன் சுட்டான் 2 பேரை குருதியால் நிரம்பிட்டு இரண்டு முறை அந்த குழி குருதியால் நிரம்பிட்டு அந்த இருவரும் எனது மகனைப் போலவே இருந்தனர். எனது மகனைப் போலவே இருந்தனர். உயரம், அழகு, கருப்பு, துணிவு. So that was the series title On the Street Anytime. And I have a few other poems, but I do not know whether I should continue or whether we should have a discussion or Q&A.
You can continue, sir. Maybe one more poem, sir, possible, please.
Do you want me to read one or two more?
Yes, sir. Please.
Okay. The title of this poem is Where Have We Come From? Where have we come from? We have come from everywhere. A huge lake, a mountain range, an endless river, a desert without sunshine, snow that floats in air, a burning word of anger that hasn't been allowed to splash out. We a love that hates and rejects, that blacks. Your love that hates and rejects the black. All these, until the moon cools, until 100 suns burn out the chasm. In the enlightenment that comes from that crossing, in the enlightenment that comes from the crossing, is seen, oh, I see the vagina. We have all been born in the same place. We have all been born in the same place. Let me read that one in in Tamil too. So, எந்த இடத்திலிருந்து வந்திருக்கிறோம்? எந்த இடத்திலிருந்து வந்திருக்கிறோம்? எல்லா இடத்திலிருந்தும் வந்திருக்கிறோம். எல்லா இடத்திலிருந்தும் வந்திருக்கிறோம். ஒரு பெரும் ஏரி, தொடர் மலை, முடிவற்ற ஆறு, வெயில் இல்லாத பாலை, காற்றில் மிதக்கும் பனி, வெளியே தெரிக்காத கோபத்தில் எரிகின்ற சொல்லு, கருப்பை வெறுத்தொதுக்கு முன்னுடைய காதல் என நிலவு குளிரும் வரையும் 100 சூரியன்கள் தகிக்கும் வரையும் ஒரு இடைவெளி, ஒரு பெரு இடைவெளி. அதை கடந்த பிற்பாடு வருகின்ற ஞானத்தில் தெரிகிறது ஒரு யோனி. ஓம். நாம் எல்லோரும் பிறந்த இடம் அதுதான். நாம் எல்லோரும் பிறந்த இடம் ஒன்றுதான். So thank you very much. I'll have 3 more poems to read that I would like to read those poems toward the end of the session. Would that be all right?
Yes.
Yes, I guess so.
Yeah.
Sir Armstrong, sir, are you there? Do you want to make any comments, or can I go ahead and?
Yes, you can go ahead, Kavita. Please
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Cheran. Thanks so much. That was very lovely. I just wanted to thank Prakriti Foundation for this opportunity, because I'm a huge fan of Cheran's poetry, and this is very important for me. Before I go to there is only one question, but before I go to that question, I would like to say something about Cheran's poetry. I mean, we've discussed it a lot. I've done some interviews with him. I think he has published 10 poetry collections till 2018. After that, have you added anything, Cheran, to your poetry collection? It's 10,
You mean
right?
the my new poetry collections?
No, your entire poetry collection. You have 10, right?
No, it's
More than that.
you mean the
More than 10.
collection books?
No, I'm just asking about the poetry and the number of poetries that you have.
Oh,
Poetry
about
collection.
10.
Yeah. 10.
I have all of them right surrounding me here. 10 collections so far. So, well, actually, I can tell you the exact number of poems that I wrote so far. It's 400.
Okay, 400. Okay, I no, but like when I interviewed for the HuffPost last year, you told me about the titles and how they convey the
Yes.
trajectory of the Civil War. Second Sunrise, Pati Armstrong Suna, that was a very important point. And Kada Trip, titles which have a meaning of their own. And I
Yes.
wanted you read a poem from Anyer.
Yes.
I wanted you to tell the people here on how you chose that word. It's a very rare word from Sangam literature. I wanted you to tell the people about that word and how you chose it as a title for the collection.
So this is the collection that Kavita talking about. Anyer. Anyer is an old the very old Tamil word for individual and collective trauma. Right. So after 35 years of civil war and genocide, the Tamil community from Sri Lanka has been going through this ungrabbable kind of the trauma. So everyone has been writing about combat trauma, the trauma of the civilian population, etc., etc., and all different kinds of psychological, sociological articles and stuff. And they could not find an appropriate Tamil word for trauma. So I've been writing about all these things before. Then I thought, okay, so one of the most important aspects of the Tamil classical poetry, the Sangam poetry, is the depiction of war and the cruelty. On the one side is war, on the other side is love. So if there's so much written about, so much great poetry, beautiful poetry, powerful poetry written about wars in the past, so there must be some kind of a discussion, some kind of word, some kind of an articulation about trauma. So I then went back to the classical Tamil poetry, and then I located at least 6 or 7, probably about 14 references of this particular word, Anyer, the Peer Anyer, Nadakanyar. And interestingly, one could say that in English, the trauma, there is individual trauma and the collective trauma, right? But in this particular Tamil word, it combines both. So that became the title of this particular collection about my lost friends and what happened during the last stage of the war and how it's extremely disturbing kind of poetry in there. So there is a kind of continuity in this series, because my first title of my first collection of poems that appeared in 1983 was called The Second Sunrise. Right. So as some of you may know, I started writing that particular collection after the burning of Jaffna Public Library. I was the witness, and that is how my political career and my poetic career was launched in Jaffna with the burning of Jaffna Public Library. The title was The Second Sunrise. And my second collection, you say, it was called Yaman, the Lord of Death, because the burning was in 1980, 81. Then by 1983, there was a full-fledged civil war and the pogrom against Tamil all over. And then the Lord of Death came out in 1984. And in a similar way, you can see the other titles in the time of burning, right? That largely dealt with the internecine warfare among the various Tamil militant groups. At the same time, also bringing in the time of burning as a kind of a metaphor for
Right.
then you have the other collection after the genocide called Kadatu, the healing the forest.
Hmm.
Kadatu is a kind of ritual we know.
Huh.
We try to take all these the ash and bones and dissolve them in in the sea, and we'll have kind of a closure, right? So the closure is extremely important if there is the large scale atrocity, massacre, even individually. But in the case of us, no closure because we do not know what happened to 146,000 people at least. So there's no closure. So we cannot have a card action, right? So that was card action. That because of all these things, then the trauma became one of the large issues because we were not talking about trauma because we were only talking about the militancy, fight, the resistance, war, etc. We never talked about the trauma. We never realized the importance and the extreme negative power that trauma could have on somebody. Then I ended up with this collection, Anyan. After this one came,
Yeah.
Tanai Mayakam. It's very difficult to translate. It's overlapping landscapes or overlapping genres of different things, right? That goes to back. So that is how the entire collections of my poetry and entire poetry career can be read not intentionally. I did not write them intentionally. It's either
Okay.
unfortunately or accidentally it happened that way that one can read it as a witness to the
The,
history, a witness to what happened to my community in the past.
okay. I have a couple of questions more, but I think I'll go to the questions there in the chat, in the question and answer box. One first question is from Sarvendra Dharmalingam. He wants to know what motivates, provokes you to write poems.
What motivates me to write poetry?
Yeah.
So, day before yesterday, I was interviewed by a Spanish journal, and then the academic and poet and the professor who interviewed me asked me, um, "How does poetry come to you?" Right? How does poetry come to you? I said, "It doesn't come to me. It lives with me. I live poetry." So that means it is possible for everyone, every good human, every kind, every nice human being to write one or two poems. That is possible because we have that sense of aesthetics. We have the sense of commitment to nature. We have that sense of admiration to sweet words, to good words, powerful words. Anyone can write one or two poetry. No, but being a poet 24/7 is a different thing
Mm.
because of the poetic senses, the poetic antenna, it should always be working. So, every time whether I'm walking or whether I'm reading or whether I'm going for something, that particular, the aesthetic, poetic engine, it continues to burn. It never stops. Sometime I may write here and there one day, or someday I may not write anything. But the poetic, aesthetic, poetic engine, it keeps on burning. It keeps on working. So that is how I end up writing poetry, and that is a motivation. The motivation lives with me.
Uh, Second question is from Adagarasan. Please share your thoughts on your choice of the mode of poetry and its ability to function as a mode of resistance.
Uh, I think what Alagarasan wants to ask is it's what mode of literature is poetry, or what's the difference between the mode of what's the difference between poetry as a mode of literature? Is that the question?
He says mode of poetry, your thoughts on mode of poetry and its ability to function as a mode of resistance.
A mode of resistance. Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
right. Uh-huh.
okay. I think I do not know whether I would be comfortable calling it as a mode of poetry because as we know that poetry has evolved and changed, right? From right from the early archival poetry to complex forms of Wanba and all kinds of things. Poetry poetry, the form of poetry has changed, the mode of poetry has changed over the past 2,500, 600 years, right? So right now, the kind of poetry I have been writing initially was not completely in a kind of a very difficult kind of poetry. It's a basic, very simple narrative kind of a Howell kind of poetry. But then, it changed and it included certain kinds of uh, the rhyme. I wouldn't use the word rhyme. It's kind of in Tamil we call it octisai. It is not an artificial thing, but it's being created from the poetry within itself, right? So there are all kinds of changes that took place in the way I write poetry, or the way I write poetry now, the different modes. On the question of resistance, yes, uh, I would strongly argue that you could say, I resist, therefore I am, right? I resist and I write poetry, therefore I am. So that is one way of saying it. And the second way of articulating is to see, I do not simply believe that the poetry can bring about a revolution overnight. I do not think the poetry can drastically alter the existing economic and political setup. But poetry can have an incremental change, the effect of incremental change, right? In Tamil, we have this saying, "Erumbu ura kat kuliyum,"
Yeah.
right? So that is the kind of a thing, it may take, depending on the historical context, historical and political context, it may take it may be quick, or it may take a longer time. But I believe it goes straight to your heart, straight to your mind, straight inside, and it changes one by one, right? It's a kind of a gentle change. It's a kind of incremental change. So I believe that is one of the main form of main kind of results that the poetry could bring in, incremental change. And then we should not be too concerned about this incremental change, because that is part of resistance. Right? The resistance is not only it does not necessarily need to be a collective resistance all the time. There's individual resistance, everyday resistance, right? I cross the check line, there's an army, there's a soldier. He speaks to me either in Hindi or in Sinhala. I refuse to answer because I do not speak Hindi, I do not speak Sinhala. Then I get hit. I got hit. So I could have easily answered him in whatever way, and I could have escaped, but I didn't do it. So that is that's an example of everyday resistance. And that everyday resistance is part of the incremental change. So I look at poetry that way.
But in Sri Lankan Tamil context, Cheran, poetry, I thought poetry was also a kind of witness to the history, like you had already mentioned.
Yeah, it was not actually the witnessing aspect is not voluntary, right? I do not really want to be a historian. I do not really want to be the recorder of narrative.
True,
That
yeah.
was not my choice, and I did not think that is going to be an important role that I was playing, or I was expected to play, right? But it happened because there wasn't, as you see, there are no documents available. As I see, as I say in one of my poetry, nothing. So whether I like it or not, I witness, I see, I get mad, or I feel like I need to write. So that happened. So in that sense, it's a kind of an involuntary witness. I became the involuntary witness to the genocide of Tamils in Sri Lanka, and I do not think that is ended, because it continues in various other forms, right?
Okay. Next question is from Shash Trevet. Please, could you ask Cheran to spell that word "anir" in English for collective
But
trauma?
in English. So well, I think we talked about it, right? But let me quickly say the anir.
Yeah, he wants a spelling of that word. Like, how would you spell it in English if you are going to write it?
It is difficult to spell it in English, but we have to use the Spanish N, A, We can write simply A-N-J-A-R, Anjar, but that doesn't really get you the pronunciation in Tamil. So I think I would suggest we write A, and then we get the Spanish letter. It comes to mañana, in. So N, and there's an A-R, Anjar. That is how I think we should write the word in English, Anjar. It's a nya sound, right?
Yeah.
There are certain sounds, certain ways of pronouncing certain words that is not available in other languages, right? So that is the uniqueness of each and every language, right?
The next question is from Tamare. Though your poems were translated, you still prefer the original one. Is it because it is original, or do you feel English words are not sufficient to express your thoughts and feelings?
It's a good question. Thank you for the question. There are certain poems that are easily and beautifully translatable, and there are certain poems that are beyond translation, right? That is my experience, and since I know my English reasonably well, I work with the translators if they are not fluently bilingual. If they are fluently bilingual, and if they are raised in the tradition of English poetry and Tamil poetry, then there is no need to spend a lot of time with the translator, right? Professor Chelva Kanakanagam or all the others. But there are other translators who translate the poetry from Tamil to English, or Tamil to Spanish, or from English to Spanish, or English to Dutch. Then the things become a bit complicated. So I need to sit with them and then go over each and every metaphor, sometimes the words. And overall, I've been very satisfied with most of the English translations of my poetry. And as you can see, I can read them the way I also read them in Tamil, right? I can also perform my English poetry in English and the Tamil simultaneously without looking at them. And now this is a different kind of context, right? But I must also admit that there are certain of my poem that is really, really difficult to translate, because there is this internal rhythm, right? It's not the external sandam or that kind of thing, but there's some kind of internal rhythm. It is created especially created through the words and through my feeling. It is very difficult to translate. It is very difficult to get the same power of the poetry and language in a different language. But on the other hand, like this, on the street anytime, in the Terivilla Forum, you have no problem at all, right? So that's why. So we had when we come out with a collection in other language, we need to be very conscious of the fact that it needs to try and incorporate both aspects of the poetry.
Okay, I have a couple of questions before we move to your reading again. One is about the recent poems, unpublished poems, which you just read in the Teruvilla Podum, the series. I somehow felt that violence is becoming a recurring theme in your poem, especially இப்போ காடாற்று அணியர் மாதிரியான after those collections which kind of try to bring in a closure, try to kind of find some solace. Violence keeps coming up in your poetry again. Do you think that violence is a recurring or inevitable part of your poetry, Cheran?
I would say it is not just an inevitable part of my poetry, but in the past 10 or 15 years, or even in the human history, the violence is inevitable part of human history. Violence is inevitable part of our society, whether you look in India or Bangladesh or US, Germany, especially in the past 8 years, we were forced to witness unimaginable kinds of violence and the justification of violence justification of racial violence, right? And people, especially in the country that I live, in the area I live in North America here, it's Canada. It's, people may say it's a bit less, but we are right next to US. And I have hundreds of the Black students. I have hundreds of students from from oppressed, the oppressed minorities from various parts of the world. And then what happens is whether I like it or not, I end up reading about them, witnessing them, right? Just last night, I'm sitting here. There's a corner. There's a small garage there, and right next to the garage there is a store. And last night around 2 a.m. in the morning, police were there, and they had to cordon off the entire area and see, because there was a hate crime. Right, there was a hate crime. So this is the context. It may not be partly, I'm extremely sensitive to these events, or partly because some of the subjects I teach that make me very prone to be sensitive to those issues. Those may be the reasons why the idea, the effect of violence that uh, that keeps on coming in my poetry, right? Again, that is not voluntary. I would rather prefer to write about something else, which I will read later.
Okay, I think we have 10 more minutes. There's one final question from Sarvendra Dharmalingam. You have written 400 poems and few songs. Why few songs?
Why few songs? Well, I mean, I must correct you, my friend. I have written about 145 songs, and most of the songs are available on CD, and most of the songs are being played in various things. But unfortunately, it's extremely difficult to compete with the music industry in Tamil Nadu, right? And some of my, at least two sets of compact discs of my songs were published 10 years ago, and music was composed by this famous Malayalam composer, Ravindran. And they are, in fact, he was a fan of my poetry and songs, right? So and there are other songs too, and I keep on writing songs, and there are lots of singers in Toronto. They compose and they perform it here. And in fact, 3 weeks ago, there was a performance of my songs to raise funds for the Tamil chair at the University of Toronto. So I like to do that, but then again, it needs a proper companionship, right? The good composer and thing. And most of the songs, I first write the song,
Okay.
then it is being put to the music, not the other way around, right? There are only 2 or 3 exceptions, and most of my songs are first either my poetry or that I write them as songs. So I think it's not bad. 100 is not bad, right? It's a century.
Yeah. So no more questions. So we have 9 more minutes. I think you should read your remaining poems.
So how many minutes do I have?
We have 8 minutes. It's still 8 o'clock, right? So can somebody confirm, please?
Santosh?
Yeah, you can read however many you want.
Yeah.
How many?
I'll read whatever. Yeah, whatever you have. Okay.
Now I'll read 3 more poems, right? If I read too many, then you may lose patience with poetry. So I'm the title of this poem is the Salty Kiss. Salty Kiss. It's the context of the poem is in the United Arab Emirates. I read this poem. I wrote this poem when I was stayed there for a while 2 years ago. The Salty Kiss. To not sing about the afternoon is impossible. The one wandering the street desert, his voice ringing off with grief, is not the singer. In his path, marble tears of sunlight and patti flowers. The nectared voice from the mosque that calls one to pray is filled with Rumi's tenderness. I left all of that to return home in a broken ship. I left all of that to return home in a broken ship. It was broken by an iceberg. Who scattered the salt even before the street in front of the house is bathed in snow? Does God extinguish the street lights during the day? What shall I call? What shall I call the salty kiss, written now by the one who turns aside, her hair loose in our strange bed, even as the heat abounds with misty love, who turns aside, her hair loose in our strange bed, abounds with misty love. Misty love. So, may I read that one in Tamil as well? So, it's Uppu Muttam. Uppu Muttam. பிற்பகலை பாடாமல் இருக்க முடியவில்லை. துயரம் பிழியும் குரலுடன் பாலை வனத்தில் அலைபவன் பாடகன் அல்லன். அவனுடைய நடைபாதையில் வெயிலின் பனியும் கண்ணீரும் பட்டிப்பூவும் வள்ளிப்பட வா என அழைக்கும் பள்ளிவாசனின் அமுத குரலில் பூமியின் கவிதையின் கனிவு. அவற்றை விட்டுவிட்டு தனிப்பாறையில் நொறுங்கும் கப்பலில் வீடு திரும்புகிறேன். வீட்டில் முன்தெரு பனியில் தோய முன்பாகவே உப்பை வீசி செல்பவன் யார்? பகலில் எல்லா தெருவிளக்குகளையும் அணைத்தவன் கடவுளா? விசித்திரமான நமது படுக்கையில் காதலின் ஈரலிப்புடன் வெப்பம் ததும்பினாலும் அவிழ்ந்த கூந்தலுடன் திரும்பி படுப்பவள் திருப்பித் தரும் உப்பு முத்தத்தை, அவள் திருப்பித் தரும் உப்பு முத்தத்தை எப்படி அழைப்பது? எப்படி அழைப்பது? So I'm going to read this poem titled, in Tamil it is titled Ninaibili, and my friend and translator title is The Memoryless. I will read this poem in English and Tamil. It's called The Memoryless. The hidden torture chamber is a square building. Let's now forget that you and I and many others asked for a house with surrounding space in a square plot as dowry. Not even a window, a piece of sky. There is no note that the building shakes in rain or lightning or thunder. no memory of it even. When I reply to that soldier that I cannot understand her singular, when I reply to that soldier that I cannot understand her singular, she rains rockets of filthy words in Tamil. In her vocabulary, my poems go straight to the graveyard. It is not surprising that she doesn't know anything singular, plural, masculine, feminine, or gender neutral. No need to reveal the mystery that she is on our side. There is no need. She urinates on our plates in front of us. The soddy, the gravy, and curry became even more watery. If I don't eat, they will hit me with a rusty iron bar. Knowing I spat on the plate. This true is uncelebrated valor mixed with foolishness, ego, and strong emotions. Still, this is a poem of distress. It is not about for the lotus to bloom. It is a prison. This is a prison of distress. Dear heart, remember, please remember, there is no life for the memoryless. There is no life for the memoryless. Let me read it in Tamil too. Okay, Chair, sorry about it. Got it. Okay, yeah, here we go. The memoryless, the title in Tamil is Ninaivili. Ninaivili. ஒளித்து வைத்திருந்த வதகூடம் ஒரு சற்சதுர கட்டிடம். எங்களை ஒளித்து வைத்திருந்த ஒரு வதைகூடம், ஒரு சற்சதுர கட்டிடம். தெருவோரம் சற்சதுர காணி நிலத்தில் ஒரு வீடும் வளவும் சீதனமாக வேண்டும் என நானும் நீயும் அவர்களும் பலரும் வலிந்து கேட்டதை இப்பொழுது மறந்து விடுவோம். எண்ணல் இல்லை, ஒரு துளி வானமும் இல்லை, மழைக்கும் இடிக்கும் மின்னலுக்கும் கட்டிடம் அதிர்ந்ததாக ஒரு குறிப்பு கூட இல்லை. அது பற்றிய நினைவும் இல்லை. காவல் படையாளின் சிங்களம் விளங்கவில்லை. காவல் படையாளின் சிங்களம் விளங்கவில்லை என்று அவளுக்கு திருப்பி சொன்னால், அதற்கு பதிலாக அவள் தனக்கு தெரிந்த எல்லா தமிழ் கெட்ட வார்த்தைகளையும் ஏவுகணைகளாக எறிகிறாள். அவள் சொல்லாட்சியில் எனது கவிதை நேரே கல்லறைக்கு போகிறது. அவளுக்கு ஒருமை, பன்மை, ஆண்பால், பெண்பால், பலர்பால் எதுவுமே தெரியாது. அதில் வியப்பும் இல்லை. அவள் நம்பால் இல்லை என்பது சொல்லித் தெரிகிற சூத்திரமும் அல்ல. எங்களுக்கு முன்னே உணவு தட்டில் சிறுநீர் கழிக்கிறாள். குழம்பும் சொதியும் இன்னும் நீரால் ஆகின. அதனை தின்னாவிட்டால் உக்கிய இரும்பு கம்பியால் அடிப்பார்கள் என தெரிந்தும் உணவு தட்டின் மீது காரை உமிழ்கிறேன். முட்டாள்தனமும் அகங்காரமும் உணர்ச்சி புயலும் சேர்ந்து ஒரு கொண்டாடப்படாத மாவீரம் இது. கொண்டாடப்படாத மாவீரம் இது. இதுவும் தான், அதுவும் தெரிந்ததே. இருந்தாலும் இது அவலச்சிறை, சுரி சேறு அல்ல தாமரை மலர்வதற்கு. அவலச்சிறை. நெஞ்சே நினை, நினைவிலிக்கு வாழ்வில்லை. நினைவிலிக்கு வாழ்வில்லை. I'm going to read, this is going to be my last poem for today. It is not a new poem. It's actually, I wrote it in 2005, but it has a common theme, or it has the common idea is that my poem, my poetry never ends. Right? Every single poem, it has no end. It always continues. Right? This poem cannot be finished off writing. This poem cannot be finished off writing. This song not ended, thirst not quenched. Every memory refuses to be effaced. Every plot declines to produce. Every face is reluctant to endure. A dream, unwilling to disrobe, lingers forever. Lingers forever, although I do not know if I am in the dream or not. Wandering and transient. Wandering and transient. Spread endless dazzling rays. Endless dazzling rays. What else can I send to feed everyone the sweetness of unbitter solitude besides this poem? What can I send? I want to read that poem in Tamil, and we can end the session. This is from the collection called Meendum Kadalukku. It came out in 2005. So இந்த கவிதையை எழுதி முடிக்க முடியாது. That's the title of the poem. இந்த கவிதையை எழுதி முடிக்க முடியாது, இந்த பாடலை நிறைவு செய்ய முடியாது, இந்த வேட்கையை தீர்த்து விட முடியாது. எந்த நினைவும் அழிய மறுக்கிறது, எந்த நிலமும் விளைய மறுக்கிறது, எந்த முகமும் நிலைக்க மறுக்கிறது. உள்ளேயா வெளியா என தெரியாவிட்டாலும் கலைய மறுத்து தொடர்கிறது எப்போதும் ஒரு கனவு. அலைவும் நிலையாமையும் முடிவற்ற கவர்ச்சி கதிர்களை வீசிக்கொண்டே இருக்கின்றன. கசப்பு சேர்ந்திராத தனிமையின் இனிமையை மற்றவர்களுக்கு மூட்டு என்று இந்த கவிதை அன்றி வேறு எதை நான் அனுப்ப? இந்த கவிதையை அன்றி வேறு எதை நான் அனுப்ப? தேங்க்யூ. நன்றி, வணக்கம்.
Armstrong sir, do you want to say something?
Time irukka?
Yes sir, you can.
Cheran sir, thank you so much. It's very powerful. உங்களுக்கு வேணா அது நினைவிலியா இருக்கலாம், நீங்க எழுதுறதெல்லாம். ஆனா எங்களுக்கு ரொம்ப மெமரபிள் ஈவெண்டா இருக்கு. நீங்க ஒரு வெரி பவர்ஃபுல் ரெண்டரிங். When I was in Canada, I read The Prison of Grass by Paul Adams. பூர்வகுடி மக்கள் எல்லாம் வந்து புல்வெளியின் கைதிகள் அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவாங்க. ஆனா உங்க போயட்ரி வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா துன்பங்களின் கைதிகளாக இருக்கிறோம் அப்படின்ட்டு நீங்க பிரிசன் ஆஃப் டிஸ்ட்ரஸ் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிருக்கீங்க. இட்ஸ் வெரி பவர்ஃபுல். நாங்க எல்லாமே பார்பரா ஹேர்லோட ரெசிஸ்டன்ட் லிட்டரேச்சரை படிச்சிருக்கோம். இப்போ உங்க போயம் கேட்டதுக்கு அப்புறம் we remind that அந்த என்டையர் புக் வந்து உங்க போயட்ரியா அப்படியே வந்திருக்க மாதிரி ஒரு ஃபீலிங் எங்களுக்கு வந்திருக்கு சார். தேங்க்யூ ஸோ மச். அது மட்டும் கிடையாது, வயலன்ஸ் பற்றி நீங்க ரொம்ப கிராண்ட் எக்ஸ்பிரஷன். இட் இஸ் எ கிராண்ட் நேரேட்டிவ் we have rendered. We always remember Franz Fanon when we talk about violence and theorizing violence in the form of books. But violence has been theorized in your poetry in a very, very gentle language, with blood, with wind, with the sea, with the salt. We are really thrilled to listen to you, sir. We feel that Franz Fanon, came into our mind, and his book is rendered through your poetry. This is very powerful rendering for students and then faculty in India. So thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your very powerful expression in this evening. It will be memorable for in our lifetime. Thank you so much. Over to Kavita.
Same. Thank you. I've always enjoyed your poetry and poetry reading sessions. This one was also amazing. I look forward to your new poetry collection, Cheran. Thank you so much again.
Yeah, it will. I think probably next year we will come. It's probably, as I said before, it's kind of a sequence to what I've been writing before, whether I like it or not. And thank you so much for this opportunity to share some of my poetry with Prakriti. And thank you, Kavita. Thank you, Armstrong. Thank you, Mira. And unfortunately, I can't see all the other participants. I hope the program was very useful.
Nobody left, sir. All are, and still there. The number is there from the beginning till the end.
What, that was a question for me?
No, sir. No question. No question.
No, that's okay.
Okay, everybody, we've come to the end of the session. We thank the poet Cheran sir, the moderator Ms. Kavita for that wonderful session, and Dr. S. Armstrong, professor and head, the Department of English from the University of Madras, and also all the faculty members and students for their support throughout the years, and all the other activities as well. Our next event is on 26th December, next Saturday, evening 7 p.m. It's Drama Discourse Dialogue, a retrospective of plays written by Ms. Manjula Padmanabhan. We have Chennai-based group Theatre Nisha performing two of the plays, The Dhobi's Wife and Famous Last Words, directed by V. Balakrishnan. Look out for the updates in our social media handles, and have a pleasant weekend. Have a good night, and thank you, everybody.
Risha, can I talk to you for a second?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, you can.
You're the organizer, right?
Yes, you have. You can.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chairman, sir. Thank you so much. I'm leaving, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for everything. I'll see you next year.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Thank you, Kavita. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Meera and Santosh, thank you so much.
Yeah, Kavita will be in touch.